Well, oh my goodness. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Those of you that celebrate that, yesterday, Thursday here in the United States, was Thanksgiving. It was a wonderful, relaxing day with family and wonderful food, and so much to be grateful for. I've had just an amazing year, and a couple years actually since really diving in and doing this full time and being your guide full time, and I love that, and I'm so grateful for my life and that I'm actually on purpose, that I'm living what I'm supposed to be living and helping you guys do that as well. So a little fun today. I wanted to come on today instead of Wednesday because it is actually a very special day energetically that I wasn't even aware of until thanks to one of my Dragon Hearts. They posted something about this, and I realized that today is the 333rd day of the year. And that leaves 32 days until the brand new year. But that 333, that magical number of change and shift, and also adding up 333 is a 9 of cyclic completion. So you might be feeling that shift forward into starting to think about the news, starting to think about 2020, starting to move into like, oh, what is next year going to carry for me? And I wanted to go back and share some stories, because one of the things that I realized is so wonderful about where my journey is at now is the magic. There's so much magic in my life now because I've really stepped into higher dimensional living and being aware of the magic that's all around me and trying to help you guys connect to that through the dragons, through learning how to recognize them in the land or where you are in the skies, how they're trying to communicate with you, and then how to connect with them. So I had remembered, I was thinking back on stories that I could share because I want to encourage this group to be one that shares their experiences, that comes in and fills in, whether it's a drawing or a little typed story of something you experienced, of your sharings, of what is happening for you in the world. Because when we do that, when we start talking about our experiences with the dragons, or maybe you're experiencing fairies or unicorns or whatever is in your world, most of you listening are having the dragons because that's what this group is about and why you're here. But when we start sharing that, then all of a sudden people around us start realizing like, oh, why aren't I having experiences like that? Or maybe I could have experiences like that, and maybe they're all around me and happening and I'm just not aware of it. And it helps everybody wake up to that one notch higher of what their life could be and that potential of opening. So way back, and I realized in looking through my picture albums, hi Diana, that this story that I wanted to share was actually almost exactly 12 years ago. It was the week before Thanksgiving in November when I was in England to actually write The Dragon Within, when I went to Glastonbury and had all of it come through. And on my way there, I actually spent some time with a very good friend, two good friends in England who had been doing some other activation work with around the world. And so I got to go visit them, and they took me to some wonderful places. And on this one special day, we drove up to Cambridge, up to the campus, and walked around to see it. And I had one of the most incredible, well, this day was full of magic, but one of the most incredible experiences was walking into one of the gardens, and my two friends sort of were drawn to another area. They were looking at something, and something was drawing me into this one particular courtyard. So I walked through, I don't remember if it was an archway or a brick wall of some kind, but I was definitely in a different space. It felt like a different quad or courtyard on the campus. And there was a fountain, and there was a large lawn, and there were bushes all along these beautiful brick buildings. You know, the Cambridge campus is incredibly beautiful and old, and the buildings are just picturesque, you know. And what happened as I approached the fountain, I realized I was picking up on something energetically around me. So I started tuning in, and all of a sudden I felt this very young, quite fairly small dragon hopping around the fountain, and he came over near where I was, and I just was sort of taken aback because I hadn't had a lot of direct experiences with dragons sort of in the regular world, outside of the ones I always connected to in meditation and worked with that are the much bigger dragons, or the galactic dragons. This was a very personal one about my size, maybe a little bit smaller, who was in this courtyard here on this college campus. And so I just started paying attention to him, and he was very playful and interactive, and my friends were calling me over, so I went to walk away, and he hopped on my back, actually, and I felt this message coming up, I just would like to travel with you. And I thought, well, okay, I'm not going to turn that away. This is very interesting, and I'll be honest, it was, you know, not too early on in my journey, but it was one of the earlier experiences with that level of interaction with another being who is through the multidimensional plane that I couldn't see, but I could feel energetically, and I could sense the communication that was coming. And I just very playfully was like, okay, so I had this being sort of giving me a piggyback ride, like hopped on my back and was sort of propped up on this one shoulder, and walking along, went over to my friends and didn't really say anything right away to them. I eventually shared with him because he stayed there all the way back to the car. And then we got in the car and he hopped in the back seat with me and it took up quite a lot of space, and my friends were wondering, you know, what is going on back there? We really feel like there's something different in the back seat and there's this different energy there. What's going on? And so I shared it with them, and they just got a big kick out of that because they know that the dragons seem to follow me everywhere I go. So didn't really understand why. Before we got to the car, he had followed me around campus a bit, and I felt like he was sort of exploring a place that he hadn't been able to get to, almost as if there was some kind of a perimeter or gateway of some kind that prevented him leaving that courtyard unless there was someone that could help him pass through. And I don't know why or how. I don't question things anymore. I just know that he needed a ride somewhere. And so he got in the car with us. And then my friends took me to a place called Wandlebury. And it's this beautiful sanctuary. There's a lot of trees and forest around. And again, it was a big lawn-like area. But what we called the Empress of Wandlebury was this magical, huge tree in the very center of it that actually had offerings. And if you've ever seen fairy altars or sanctuaries, a lot of people go and will leave little trinkets or shiny things. And there was an area of the tree that was like that. So there was a lot of fairy energy around it. And it just felt like a really sacred place. And this being within the tree, we called her the Empress because her energy was just Empress-like. And that was the second magical thing of the day. And lo and behold, the dragon actually came with me to that point, got out of the car, and that's where he wanted to be, because there was what I was going to discover down the road in about 20 minutes from then, a portal that is what he was trying to get to. And so this beautiful tree being the Empress of Wandlebury, we spent some time connecting with her. And if you haven't ever connected with the tree spirit, I encourage you to. A lot of you in the group probably have. But going out and just opening your heart, opening connection and communication. And that's something that you can practice with even on smaller conscious beings. Any plants around your house, they are living beings. And you can actually start opening your heart and connecting and communing. And very simple communications start with, what are they needing? Do they need more sunlight? Do they need nutrients? Do they need more water, less water? Do they just need someone to talk to them once in a while? I tend to have a very green thumb because I open up to my plants and just really enjoy their company. So this beautiful Empress was sharing her space with us, and we just felt this big heart opening and walked away. And as we were walking across the grounds, he was sort of hopping along behind us. And all of a sudden, passed through something where I've described it over the years because I've told this part of the story quite often. It was like walking through a portal, and there was an energetic wall or membrane, and we were all three walking abreast of each other, shoulder to shoulder. And we walked through, and all of a sudden I noticed that the light, the ambience of the light, the tones, the colors were so much brighter, and everything just had a different feel and look to it, and it literally felt like I had walked into a different dimension. And I looked at my friends because they were sort of slowing and like caught their step, and we all looked at each other and said, "Are you feeling this?" And everybody was like, "Yeah, what is this?" So we kept walking for about 15-20 yards, and let's see, what's Coralie saying here? Check out the video of the house I decided to buy in the south of France. There are orbs and a couple of magical beings. Wonderful, Coralie. I'd love to check it out. So why don't you post the video for us as a link? I don't know if you just did that, but anyway, going into this light, everything was different, and we all felt it. And we walked about 20 yards, and then we walked out of it. And it was literally like one of those, I feel like it was a crack in the time-space continuum, or a crack in the third degree shell that is around the planet, where we actually stepped through into a different dimensional plane because everything felt different there. The light sparkled, it had different aspect and quality to it. Everything was more rich and almost like vibrating in a way. And then we felt ourselves step out of again, and all three of us were quite aware of it. Step back in. Wow, step back out. And I noticed later, I didn't realize it till much later, that the dragon actually followed us there, and then I didn't have any more contact with him. So I felt like somehow he knew or recognized energetically, because he could see my energetic being, that I was one that could help him get there, and somehow he knew that we would be going there. Not sure how that level of the magic works, but I do know that it was a magical day for me with all of those things happening, and just that trust in the experience. You know, sometimes when we are afraid to share, or we don't think to share our experiences, part of it's because we have this little fear in us that somebody's gonna call us crazy, or they're gonna negate it in some way, and then we'll question ourselves and doubt, and then it sort of gets shoved to the side or pushed down where we forget about it. And when we don't realize how much magic is happening around us, we lose the magic aspect of living. And really what we're here to experience is more and more and more of that magic. And we are in a time, you guys, moving towards 2020, and all the energy work that's been done in the last 20, 30 years, and especially in the last few, there is some energy ramping up for big, big change for us. There's energy ramping up for moving really the fifth dimension and above. And I know a lot of people talk about the fifth dimension, but how do you actually experience it? How do you actually step into living with it in your journey on a regular daily basis? And, you know, what does that look like? Do we actually go to a different, planet? Is it really a new Earth? And no, it's right here. All the dimensional planes are here. And what I'm starting to see with the work I'm doing with my dragon hearts is that there's threads. When we can hold that dimension within ourselves, when we connect to our light body and bring it in, and we can connect to that and pull, when we connect to that fifth dimensional aspect, we pull that thread. It's almost like what I call magnetizing the dimensions to each other through us. And that widens the space. And it also creates more and more threads wherever we can do that. And as we get more and more threads of that, it makes it more available to us and to everybody else. And so much dragon energy coming to the forefront. Absolutely, Carla. I am thrilled about that, because mainstream media and movies and everything else, even with kids media, there's some great animated stuff with dragons now, even for my little one. I have a 5-year-old, and there's some great programs with dragons for them, and they haven't lost it. They still can see and recognize those energies, and even outside the dragons, they can recognize all the beings that are around, and especially the angelic beings, and communicate with them. So what I wanted to share today is that little story of the magic, of don't forget about the magic, pay attention to it, but also start sharing it. Because it's when we share that we bring that out loud into our 3D realm, and we start accessing the magic and bringing it into a bigger way into the world, and that's magnetizing those fifth dimensional energies to us. Well, everything beyond that is also available. So for those that are able to actually move beyond that, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th dimensional frequencies are coming in now. They are available to us. That's why the Pleiadian dragons are finally working with me. They are the 7th, 8th, and 9th dimensional portals into this realm. And so those threads, it's like the front of the bell curve. They're out there at the front, starting to thread those energies into this realm. But what that means is we are smack dab in the middle of the 5th dimensional energies, starting to be readily available to everyone that wants to move towards them and actually experience them. So how do we introduce the world to that? How do we break that barrier so that more and more magic is available in the world? And here we go, Corley. Even in corporate world, people listen and open up to magic. Absolutely. People love to, that's why fairy tales are so popular as children. That's why even as adults, a lot of Disney movies are made really for adults, because we love magic. We remember magic. And it lights something up that's childlike and wondrous within us, and it reminds us of the truth that's outside this reality. The magic is real, and magic is all around us. And that's why those fairy tale stories are so popular and across the board. Hello, Hannah. And so that's why I say, let's bring the magic back in. That's not the fairy tale Disney movies. That's not the animated stuff that's out there. That's really the real experiences that we're having every day, because I know you guys are having them. And I know you look up in the sky sometimes and you see angels or you see dragons, and they speak to you, and you get a hit of something, and you get a wake up of realization where, because of that interaction, a whole bunch of information just clicked to place into your body or into your mind or your decision making process. That's magic. And when you share that with other people, instead of just being quiet about it and saying, oh yeah, I made a decision about this, or I've moved forward and I got confirmation about this. Well, how did you get the confirmation? Because when you share that story, that's how they learn to get their confirmations. And that's how they learn to remember the magic. And so that little story with that little dragon in Cambridge is really what I wanted to bring up today, because I want you guys in the group to start sharing, and not just in the group, but outside of your circle. You might have a lot of people in your world that will poo-poo everything you say about dragons, or think you're crazy, or look at you like you have a purple forehead, and that's okay, because for the 1 or 2 people out of 10 that you share it with, or that hears about it, you're going to crack them open, and they are going to be changed forever. And that's worth doing. When one person's life changes forever. And I used to say this about teaching meditation. I taught meditation back in Lander, Wyoming. Yes, ranching country. This is where my guides got me started back in 2003. And Metatron was working with me every day in meditation, remembering my healing work, getting everything back online for me. I had a breakthrough when I turned 36, and full awakening, it all came back over that winter. And being asked or guided by my guides to go and start teaching meditation in a ranching community of 8,000 people in Wyoming, I tell you what, I was resistant to it. I kept saying, no, can't I wait until I go somewhere else? Why do I need to do it here? But it was instigating a whole bunch of things within my own process. And it was also giving a gift to all the people of that community, which I loved that community. I loved all the people there. So it ended up being the most amazing thing, because over 3 years, I taught every night, every Thursday night for 3 years. Other nights I would do just group meditations. And whether I had one student, because sometimes I had one private student, sometimes I had 12 in a class for a 6-week series. But I had a class every Thursday, and I had a group sometime else in the week. And here I was in a tiny community, and everybody was getting to know me as this meditation teacher, guide, and it allowed them to crack open. Did it touch everyone in the community? No, there were some hardcore rangers that weren't about to think about meditation or yoga, right? But there were many that, because of the stories I was telling and relating and sharing, changed their lives. And the whole aspect for me was, if it changes one person's life, it's all worth it. And that is still the mantra that I live by with my work, that if it changes one person and shifts them forward into a higher frequency or a higher expansion into the magic of their life, then it's worth it. So that's why I come to you guys every week. That's why I'm here every Thursday, at least as many as I can be in a year. I apologize when I'm sick or traveling, but I want to be there to share it, and I want you guys to take advantage of this group to share and get used to that sharing. Use it as a practice place. Use it as a tool to tell your story, so that when you're out and about in the world and you have a coworker or a friend or a new acquaintance that somehow you get inspired, like feeling this niggling, like I should tell them this story about this dragon that I saw on the rocks when I was hiking last weekend. And you're not sure why, because you don't know them that well, and you're sort of nervous about it because you don't want to like have them look at you sort of crazy. Break the barriers. Break down the fear and the resistance. And if you hear that little voice sort of niggling and instigating that, follow through with it, because you never know whose life you're going to change with it. So on that note, I'm going to share one other little story, because our stories is what makes us realize all these things that are around us all the time. So, gosh, it was in November of last year. So another November. So interesting that this one was exactly 11 years later than the one I just shared about Wandlebury and Cambridge. And this was landing last year in South Africa for the activations I did with the Black Dragon, aligned with the group in Egypt. And as I flew into Cape Town, there were dragons all around the plane in the skies. I could just feel this huge greeting committee on the waves around me, around the wings of the plane. And as I landed, I hadn't looked ahead at the topography of Cape Town itself. I had looked at the shorelines all along where I was headed. But as I landed, I saw out in the peninsula around the bay this massive dragon in the land, and his back is Table Mountain, which is quite famous. You can do on Google Earth and look for it and see him in the land. And I felt this call because I was just sitting very quietly, just watching out the window as I land in Cape Town, all excited to be in Africa for the first, finally on the continent of Africa, finally in South Africa, because I'd had dreams about it for a couple of years. And feel this presence calling out to me, saying, please come visit me. Please come visit me. Okay, so I could see him, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to try and get there before I leave. It wasn't in my itinerary. I didn't really have a car or a way to get around easily. I was being escorted by some beautiful dragons down in South Africa who met me at the airport and then chauffeured me everywhere I needed to go. Talk about a magical alignment. I felt like the whole trip was magical and kept aligning with more and more unexpected experiences, and it was just profound and beautiful, and it was so blessed. And on the very last day, the night before that, I was driving around with a beautiful woman and her boyfriend who I'd met at my workshop, and they just had offered, they said, if you have time on your last day, we'd love to drive you around the Cape Town area and show you some things. And I said, that would be absolutely wonderful. I would love that. So they came and got me, and I was flying out. I had to be at the airport at like 3 o'clock, I believe. And darn if we didn't figure out a way to get out to Table Mountain. And I said, this is one thing that I really like to do if we can fit it in. Went out to Table Mountain. Wasn't really exactly sure, like, how am I going to connect to this dragon? Do I need to drive around the point? Do I need to feel him? So we thought, well, let's go up to the top at Table Mountain, and then if we need to, we'll drive around the cape where his head sits. And they thought it was really fun because they had never gone dragon hunting before, which I would call it, going out, just seeking out the dragons in the land and trying to find the place to connect with them. So we went up to the top, and lo and behold, at the top, I was drawn to this center point where there's a large, almost like a compass or a circular thing that has a sculpture in relief of the whole area of the peninsula, the table, all the land in that area. And it was thanks to that I could really understand what he was trying to communicate with me, because I sat down next to it and I started meditating and connecting, and I realized that I was sitting right above his heart chakra. The Table Mountain was placed, when I looked at the topography of it and where he actually lay in the land, that I was right above his heart chakra. So I thought, isn't that beautiful and perfect that I am sitting above and I can connect to very easily his heart. So I started tuning in and listening and communing with him. And what he shared with me was, I need you to wake up my mother. I need you to wake up my mother. Okay. So then I need to know where she is. And he said, she's just across from me. So I went and I looked back at the topo map on this whole relief, and I saw across the bay, indeed, there's another dragon that I hadn't paid close attention to because I was looking at this part. I saw the dragon in the peninsula, and she was sunken down much lower than him. She'd been asleep for a very long time in the land, and he had been waiting and waiting for someone that could come and not only recognize and hear him, but could come and wake her up. So it was so beautiful. The rest of the afternoon, timing-wise, just I couldn't believe how it worked out, because we barely had time to drive out to where I needed to get to. It was around the peninsula. I believe it was called the Hout's Landing. We were able to get lunch there. Incredible fish and chips. And then I was able to get to the closest point where his nostrils were, or quite close to it, and actually see her across the water and start connecting with her on chakra and brow chakra to brow chakra to sing her awake. And I finally was able to get her awake and reconnect them. And I said, okay, we need to get going. And I got to the airport exactly when I needed to be. It was exactly 2 hours prior to my flight, which was my goal. Realized later that I probably should have left myself 3 because things moved a little slower than I expected at the airport. And I didn't remember the passport control process that was very time consuming. But magically I got on the plane, everything flowed, and I knew that that was meant to be and what I was supposed to do. So why do I share those stories? I want you to know of those things that happen, to pay attention when you're traveling somewhere. If you hear a little voice niggling that's saying, I need your help, pay attention. Who is it? Is it a dragon in the land around you? It might be. And if you've had those experiences, to remember the stories. Maybe you need to practice telling them in the group. That's totally fine. And then start sharing them with everybody, because that's how we're going to change the world and bring the magic back. we have to get everybody to wake up and get the blinders off and realize how much more there is in this world than what they can see concretely in front of them in the 3D space. So I hope that that brings you some gratitude and some movement forward on this 333rd day of the year. And hello, Willie, darn late. Willow, darn late again, but at least I got here for the live. Yes, absolutely, Willow. And the replay is always available, and I know it'll be fun for you to re-listen. And I apologize, you probably didn't even know I was coming on live today if you didn't see the post earlier. But I will look forward to seeing you next week. And even though I do technically have the program full, if you are still interested in the Eye of the Dragon program, I want you to get a hold of me and message, even if it's so that you can just feel out and know like where you're headed for next year, or if it's meant to be your spot and things fall into place magically this year for you. We don't start till January 14th, so there is still time, and I'm still waiting to see the final alignments, because the sphere is technically full, but it will call to itself for the final grouping that is meant to be. And what else? Have a beautiful weekend. Enjoy. We're actually here. We're looking at maybe snow off and on over the next week, so we're having a little white heyday. We haven't had any real cold weather up to this point, so excited to put my Christmas tree up and play Christmas music and really get into the spirit and enjoy it for the next month before we have Christmas. So wishing you guys well. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. And of course, if you need a discovery call or want to set up a session, I am here for you. And you just go to the main page of invokehealing.com or dragonwithin.com and use the Book Now button to see my calendar. All right. Have a great day, guys. Always good to see you. Bye-bye.